The Beatles are best and popularly known for owning their style of music. Their lyrics, song arrangement, instrumentals, and other elements all synchronize to get the kind of melody they are known for. However, a lot of musical crews have tried to be like the Beatles, get ideas, and learn from them. It's a good thing to learn and get inspiration from another person, but copying exactly what that person does and claiming ownership of it is not right. Amidst all the musical crews that look up to the Beatles, Jack White claims that the Rolling Stones copy the Beatles. Is there proof to back up his claims? We'll dive right into this detail. But before we do so, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exclusive content on the Beatles. Jack White, the popular American singer and songwriter, is known for his love for the Beatles and for always advocating for the right things, especially when it's about music. With different songs, albums, and awards to his name, White is recognized in the Hall of Fame. Jack White is a board member of the Library of Congress's National Recording Preservation Foundation. He has his record label and studio named Third Man Records. Third Man Records releases vinyl recordings of his work as well as that of other artists and local schoolchildren. In his studio, he has an extensive collection of guitars and other instruments and has a preference for vintage items that often have connections to famous blues artists. He is a vocal advocate for analog technology and recording techniques. He was born on the 9th of July, 1975. He is an American singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and music producer. He is best known as the lead singer and guitarist of the duo The White Stripes. White has enjoyed consistent critical and popular success over the years and is widely credited as one of the key artists in the garage rock revival of the 2000s. He has won a total number of 12 Grammy Awards, and 3 of his solo albums have reached #1 on the Billboard charts. His major music genre includes blues rock, folk, country, and alternative rock. Jack White has always been a private person. He hardly involves himself in online talks and dramas. Jack values his privacy a lot and has been known to create misdirection about his personal life. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the Rolling Stones, its history, achievements, and comparison with the Beatles. The Rolling Stones, a British rock group, was formed in 1962. The original members were Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Brian Jones, Bill Wyman, and Charlie Watts. The other members include the likes of Mick Taylor, Ron Wood, and Daryl Jones. According to statistics, no rock band has sustained consistency and global popularity for such a long period as the Rolling Stones. Even after more than 50 years after their formation of filling the largest stadiums in the world. Though several of their mid-1960s contemporaries like Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, Eric Clapton, and Van Morrison have maintained individual positions in rock's front line, the Rolling Stones' nucleus of singer Jagger, guitarist Richards, and drummer Watts remains rock's most durable ongoing partnership. The Stones have become rock's definitive, emblematic band, a seamless blend of sound, look, and public image. The crew was formed in London as an alliance between Jagger, Richards, and multi-instrumentalist Brian Jones, along with Watts and bassist Wyman. The Stones began as a grubby conclave of students and bohemians, playing then esoteric music based on Chicago blues in pubs and clubs in and around West London. Their potential for mass market success seemed negligible at first, but by 1965, they were second only to the Beatles in the collective affection of teenage Britain. However, whereas the Beatles of the mid-1960s had longish hair, wore matching suits, and appeared utterly charming, the Stones had considerably longer hair, all dressed differently, and seemed intimidating to an extent. As the Beatles grew ever more respectable and reassuring, the Stones became correspondingly more rebellious and threatening. It felt like they were more in competition with the Beatles. At some point, the Stones, specifically Jagger, Richards, and Jones, were subjected to intense police and press harassment for drug use and all-purpose degeneracy, while the Beatles, who were in private, no less fond of marijuana, sex, and alcohol, were welcomed in Buckingham Palace and made members of the Order of the British Empire by the Queen. The Stones' early repertoire consisted primarily of recycled gems from the catalogs of the blues and rock and roll titans of the 1950s. Their first 5 singles and the bulk of their first 2 albums were composed by other people. They later got spurred on by the example of the Beatles' John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and Jagger and Richards began composing their songs. This helped in ensuring the long-term viability of the band and also served to place the Jagger-Richards team firmly in the creative control of the group. In their early days, Jones had been their prime motivating force. He was the band's most gifted instrumentalist, as well as the prettiest face, but he had little talent for composition. His textural wizardry dominated their first all-original album, Aftermath, in 1966, which featured him on marimba, dulcimer, sitar, and assorted keyboards, as well as on the customary guitar and harmonica. Thereafter, however, he declined in both creativity and influence, becoming a depressive, drug-sodden liability, eventually fired by the band mere weeks before he passed on. On the other hand, the Jagger-Richards songwriting team created its first bona fide classic, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, in 1965, and enjoyed a string of innovative hit singles well into 1966, including Painted Black, 19th Nervous Breakdown, Get Off My Cloud, Have You Ever Seen Your Mother Baby, and Lady Jane. But the era of art pop and psychedelia, which coincided with the Beatles' creativity, represented a corresponding trope for the Stones band. However, as the mood of the time darkened, the Stones hit a new stride in 1968 with the epochal single Jumpin' Jack Flash, which reconnected them to their blues rock roots, and the album Beggar's Banquet. They replaced Jones with the virtuosic but self-effacing guitarist Mick Taylor, and they returned in 1969. This time, they almost instantly became rock's premier touring attraction. By the end of 1970, the Beatles had broken up, Jimi Hendrix was dead, and Led Zeppelin had barely appeared on the horizon. Though Led Zeppelin eventually outsold the Stones by 5 albums to 1, no group could challenge their central position in the rock pantheon. Moreover, the death of Brian Jones, combined with Taylor's lack of onstage presence, elevated public perception of Richards' status from that of Jagger's right-hand man to effective co-leader of the band. The Rolling Stones crew has sure been doing well all by themselves, and they've indeed made a name for themselves. However, Jack is still of the opinion that they copy the Beatles, which he finds absurd. Although Rolling Stone ranked him number 70 on its 2010 list of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time, according to him, the Rolling Stones were constantly always chasing a hit, copying whatever the Beatles did and feeding it whatever the hippest thing was. In a new interview, while speaking with Mojo, he opined the Rolling Stones copied the Beatles. Jack, however, praised frontman Mick Jagger, saying that he was smart and was always feeding off whatever the hippest thing was at the time, including copying their biggest rival, the Beatles. Jack White further explained, saying, "People want the Rolling Stones to be cool, dirty, raucous. They don't want to understand that the Rolling Stones were chasing a hit constantly and feeding off whatever the hippest thing was, copying whatever the Beatles did last week. That disrupts the fantasy, and the fantasy's amazing. I have indulged many times with those kinds of bands. That's not an insult, that's them being smart and figuring out a way to keep the train moving." Jack had always been known to be a big supporter of the Beatles, and he revealed in the same interview that his favorite Beatle is Paul McCartney. He said, "Absolutely 1000% Paul McCartney. Get Back proves what I've been saying since I was 13. Without Paul, there's no Beatles. Everybody else is out of this world incredible, but you could theoretically take any other Beatle out of that band and still have the Beatles. You want to be on George's side, for coolness." He, however, continued saying, "It's really hard to be the one in the room who's trying to motivate everybody. They don't come off as cool. It's a shame because those are the people who make things happen. I'm not a fan of people who don't want to do things. That's demotivating." Well, this is just Jack's opinion, and we honestly do not know the motive behind this exposition, but what do you think? That's all for today's video, guys. But before we end, do you think the Rolling Stones copied the Beatles? Do you think Jack White said the right thing in the Beatles' favor? Let us know what you think in the comment section below. And if you haven't by now, ensure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new updates about the Beatles.